I'm Jonti.
And I'm Christos, and really happy to be here chatting with you this morning.
You know, we've been friends for a long time, and one of the things that I love about what we do is how much fun we have in creating workshops and experiences. And it is fun for us.
Totally. I was thinking now how one could describe it as a dance, you know. It's the interaction between us on so many levels, on ideas, inspiration, energy, practice, that over the last couple of years that we've been experimenting and creating have come to produce the most exquisite dances of life, and I find that really exciting.
Yeah, and you know, my field is so much of touch and sensuality, and I've realized, it struck me yesterday actually really deeply, the connection between touch and movement, and how when your body is stiff, when it's stiff to move, it's stiff to touch. Not only to receive touch, but to give touch. And the connection between touch and movement is enormous. And as you say, you look at it as a dance, I look at it from my perspective of sensuality and how we bring these different elements together.
I think the key commonality here is just what you said now, the sensuality, in the sense that both touch and movement incorporate 5 senses plus, you know, kinesthetic sense and proprioception. And that our relationship to ourselves, firstly, and to the world is through our senses. And when people shut down and they hold tension in their body and they hold stillness and resistance in their body, that what they're really doing is they're shutting down these senses, and basically they're shutting down awareness and consciousness of themselves and of the world, so that it becomes like a moment of disconnection. And I think what we're doing with the touch and the movement is to gently open this connection back into the world. So people, you know, really start to feel and experience themselves, but each other and the world around. And it's a beautiful way of doing it through the body.
Yeah, and that's so important, is the feeling. Because in our world, there's such an emphasis on thought and on the mind. And we move away from feeling. And there is so much power in the feeling. And we lose that connection. And beyond all of the senses that we've spoken about, it's so linked to creativity, and it's so linked to inspiration, and it's so linked to intuition and to connection. And only in the connection with ourselves can we connect with another, can we connect with life. And we shut that down into this stiffness and rigidity that so many people experience.
And it's quite sad, really, because this thing about the mind and the mental relationship that people have is valued in society. You know, if you look at education, but not only that, it's you know, people kind of attach morals to it as well. So if you, in your mind, you are good and you are, you know, you're proper, but the minute you talk about body, movement, touch, then immediately you start sensing people going like, oh dear, you know, the authorities, the church, the society is saying, you know, that's evil to in the most extreme, if not, you know, something that's reserved for very special occasions. And yet it is so intrinsically part of who we are. We're not just a mind. We're a body and a mind.
Yeah. And you know, the nature of the body is to feel, is to sense. And when we deny that, we deny an aspect of our nature. We deny an aspect of our true nature. And that's so important, to be the fullness of who we are. And when our world looks at the separation between the mind and the body, it disconnects us. And our mind is important, so is the body important, and they're one element, they're one being, and we need them both.
Yeah, the thing is that studies show that really our conscious decisions, or the conscious part of our so-called mind, is around 5%, awareness. And that a lot of the things we do come from the subconscious. And they are coming through the body. They're coming through sensation, through feeling, through our relationship in the world. And when people complain and they say like, oh, life is dead, or I don't feel very vitalized, I think it comes from shutting down the body and the experience and sensation and the information that comes through there, because we're really shutting down a whole lot of experience by denying the body.
And there's so much wisdom in the body. And the interesting thing is that the body knows things instantly. We feel something and it's immediate.
Yes.
And there's a really interesting idea that the body has a yes and a no. There's no maybe in the body. The maybe is in the mind. Let's see is in the mind. The body is yes or no. And it's immediate. And the more we can feel that, the more we're in touch with ourselves and with life, the more we're in touch with that wisdom, the more we know what expands us and we know what contracts us.
Mm-hmm. And the thing is that in terms of healing and growth, is that the experience of the body feeds directly into a visceral emotional response to the world. So if we confronted with a situation, our body is already feeling and responding, and later on the mind will interpret and say. And if we're not conscious of that, we just repeat the same patterns over and over and over again. So we confront a situation, our body responds, and before we even know it, we in the pattern, the emotional pattern, and if that is negative or traumatized, then we're stuck.
Yeah.
And maybe, with the touch, with the movement, with the connecting to the body, gently we open other possibilities.
Yeah, and that's what so much of my work is, working with the idea of patterns. And that keeps us doing the same thing in the same way. But it also keeps us feeling the same thing in the same way. So often we have the expectation of an experience rather than the experience.
Oh, totally, I agree with you there. And it also translates into the movement that the patterns we hold create the movement patterns that we have. So if you look at somebody, you'll see they'll be stooped, or they'll be slow, or they'll have minimal range of movement. In very, very bad or worse situations, their body freezes, and to gently introduce different movement in a totally different context, because I think what we're doing is we're not confronting it head on. We're not saying, oh, this is wrong, or we need to change this. We kind of gently showing alternatives,
And when we do it gently and we do it slowly, we're allowing the body and the nervous system to actually expand into a different way of being. Because the contraction and the rigidity that we hold on to and the patterns that come from that keep us doing the same thing in the same way. So when you try and force that, or you try and do too much, it contracts more, because that's our self-protection, that's our defense. So when we touch slowly, when we move slowly, and you expand into that, every movement just allows the body to relax and to feel something different, to do something different.
It's interesting, because I think the slow, progressive movement is the best. Some people or other modalities work with the intense emotional or the intense experience. I'm thinking now, something that I haven't tried, so I shouldn't really talk about, but fire walking or doing like really amazing stuff. But exactly that is, once the experience over, people shut down again as a defense mechanism. So the slow progression is great, but more importantly, I think it really goes deep. It feels or looks like it's subtle, and that maybe something's not happening, but underneath there's some really deep shifts and changes.
Yeah, because everything we do, it's planting a seed, it's adding to an energy. And I sat a little while ago in my office and I spoke with someone who's been on a journey with me for a couple of years. And she said, she was talking about how frustrated she was feeling at the beginning of this because it was so slow. And it was only now that she's realized the power of that. And, we've been doing growth work, firstly on ourselves, and teaching and learning and facilitating for over 20 years each. And the power of slow in this and the power of softness and gentleness is huge. And in a world of quick fix and intensity, it takes time for people to understand the power of that.
Yeah, it's a bit sad, people, as you say, who want the quick fix, they, will come and have an experience, make an instant decision and either never see you or go on to the next, in the next person and the next person seeking. And I find over the years, the people who stay, the people who commit, let's call it commit to a path, be it touch, be it dance, be it movement, those are the people who eventually you see on the other side with, in a few years' time or a few months, with incredible shifts and changes and growth. And you have to kind of look back and compare because it's not so immediate, immediately obvious. But it's there, and that's why I say it's deep, because it goes to the core.
Yeah.
It's not trying to fix the surface, the symptoms.
And that's what I think so many people look for, is to fix the symptom. And when we start looking and saying, actually, you don't need to fix anything. Just learn to be with yourself and learn to be within yourself. And that's what takes the time. And it's the difference between intensity and subtlety. And I think sometimes we have to go through the intensity to understand the subtlety. We have the big experiences, but then we realize they're not sustainable, because you can't hold high energy states or high experiences for too long.
I think in a lot of shamanic practice, it happens like that, where there's intense sensory either deprivation or intensification, so that it really kind of throws people off. But then it's going to be followed and it's going to be held in a context. So it's not just a once-off. This is the other thing people think when they're working with their body or they're on a path, that one workshop, one class is going to fix it, or one experience. I've had the experience, now that's it, I'm ready to go. And it takes a lot of commitment. As you said earlier on, we've been doing this for years and years and years. And it's a lifelong commitment to continuously be working.
And there's something important what you said there that we need to understand is the importance of context. That any work that we do, any growth, any experience happens in the context of our lives, which means it needs to be integrated into all that we are. It's not separate.
Yes.
And that's where I think a lot of people go and have experiences that are separate from life. And when we put it in the context of who we are, in our bodies, in our hearts, in our energies, we can integrate that into every aspect of who we are. Because touch is not separate, dance is not separate.
Yes. And I mean, related to context is intention, of course. And what is the intention for doing something, even holding a workshop or attending a workshop? And so often those intentions seem to just reinforce the patterns out in the world there. I've been to talks and workshops where they go like, well, we'll get you to have a bigger house or more money or whatever. And I think, well, are we just not reinforcing materialism and the feelings of inadequacy, for example, in that instance?
Because what happens when it doesn't happen?
Exactly. Yeah. And so the intention is really important. I mean, it's kind of like, are you going to come here so that you can have a bigger orgasm or a bigger experience or a bigger dance, or what is it, without actually saying, well, what does it mean? Why would you be pursuing this in the moment? And when you unpack that intention, suddenly these, things kind of calm down and become contextualized so that everything fits into context.
Yeah, and it's really important that. And I actually sat with somebody yesterday who's been on an amazing journey of growth, and she said she realized when she started this how much she was doing to get something in her life. That there was something that was lacking. For her, it was a relationship. So if she fixed herself enough, she'd have a relationship. That was the intention of where she started. And over time, she's realized she's doing this work for herself. And when that landed for her, she said so much changed in terms of simply feeling happier within herself and feeling more fulfilled in everything that she was doing. And the awareness that from that space, a relationship is going to come. But it's going to come as a natural flow of life, not from the space of, I don't have this, so I need to fix it and I need to change. And it's just becoming more of who we are. And you know, if I think about movement and I think about when we're young, we move so naturally and we move so freely and we move with so little self-consciousness. We don't have any. And as we get conditioned and as we get programmed and as we grow up, we kind of stiffen and we have to dance in steps, or we have to know how and the technique. And the same thing with touch. And as soon as we just relax into ourselves and just let it all go, it's, oh.
Well, it's the difference between what you often say, the doing and the being. You know, doing is about technique. You know, I'm going to, this is how I'm going to dance, these are the steps, or this is how I'm going to do a touch experience or a massage. But if one transcends that and goes directly into the experience of whatever it is, then we enter into that state of being. And then there are no, it's not goal orientated, because the outcome is the being, the outcome is the experience. And, you know, paradoxically, out of that comes growth, comes healing.
And every experience, every dance, every movement, every touch, everything that we do is simply a doorway, a portal into that. And even though there may be some technique in that, that's the doorway into something else. And we focus on that's all that there is. And I remember reading something a couple of days ago that really struck me, that there's this life before an experience and there's the life after the experience. What we bring of ourselves in the experience, what we allow, is what's going to impact on the life afterwards. So it can be, yeah, that was cool, or it can actually be, and it doesn't matter how simple the experience is, because we've learned the power of simplicity.
So I think, you know, the bottom line is to be willing to enter into the experience without, you know, looking for a goal and an outcome. I love what Alan Watts says about dance. He says, you know, when you enter the dance, you don't have a goal like I need to get to the other side of the room, or I need to do 10 steps, or I need to do whatever. The dance is the goal. The dance is the experience. And so really kind of when we move away from the expectation, I suppose, magic happens, because the minute you have a question or an expectation, you rule out all other possibilities. You know, and this is what the experience and being is about. It's about, as you said early on, expanding, opening up. You never know where that's going to take you.
No, and in so much of what we do, working on our own and together, there are constantly these amazing surprises of what comes from what. So, you know, this kind of cause and effect model limits us so much. This practice does this dance does this touch does that, instead of have the experience and see what you feel and what it brings for you.
Yes.
And there's so much freedom in that.
I think it also frees us as facilitators, because very often, you know, if one is thinking of goals and outcomes, then, you know, have I done it? Have I fulfilled it? did people get, whatever. But if, if we bring the wisdom of the practice that we have into just creating the space and opening up the space, I think people get a lot more out of that than, kind of coming at it from a different perspective.
Yeah, we've seen that so much over time. And that's allowing ourselves the experience.
Yeah.
And then we're able to meet ourselves where we are. And we're able to meet others where they are without having to have that expectation. Because all that does is it creates pressure, because there's a performance involved in that. And what happens when that doesn't happen? And I think one thing that does is it kind of puts everybody in the same place. Instead of saying we're all different and we're all at different stages in our lives, in our journeys, in our growth. And even every day we're in a different place.
Yes.
And when we allow that, we allow the experience of the moment, which was different yesterday. It's going to be different tomorrow.
I love, related to that, I love this idea of purpose. And basically, what I love is the idea that your purpose in life is just to be you, rather than your purpose in life to achieve and goals and other expectations. And that is, for me, amazing, because it brings everything in a very, it simplifies everything, but it makes it incredibly powerful, because to be you is not that easy.
Yeah.
It really is about integrating, opening up, releasing, growing, and that for me is a wonderful purpose. You know.
And I know that at times we've both had really small classes of things, and from a facilitator point of view, sometimes that's difficult. But we've spoken about this so much, of how much we do, because it's important as an expression of who we are in what it is that we do. And that keeps us connected to that purpose.
Yeah.
That happens because that's an expression of me in that moment.
Yeah. And then by being me, by connecting and being authentic, that opens the space for other people. That opens the space for other people to see that it's okay to be who they are. And I think ultimately that's the purpose of this, to experience and feel who you are, not just in your mind, in your body, with your senses, with your emotions, with the whole integration of all aspects of who you are. Yeah, and then you start to uncover, and feel, this is me.
And it creates such an intimacy with ourselves and with others and with life. And I think that's what so many of us look for, is that intimacy and connection. And in that presence, we find that.
That's what makes us human.
Absolutely.
To be connected to ourselves, be connected to each other.
And that's the fulfillment. Come join us. We'd love to share with you. Thank you.
Oops.